In the quiet of the evening, where shadows softly play, a fairy tale wolf sheds his skin, gently drifting away. With a twinkle in his eye and a heart full of dreams, he waits for the Friday night glow, where the magic redeems. Oh, the wolf in the moonlight, he's found his true call, reading tales of wonder for one and for all. In a world of stars dancing, his spirit takes flight, with stories of beauty under the starlit night. He picks up a book, the pages worn and wise, every line a whisper under the vast skies. From far off lands where the wild things roam, to enchanted forests where the heart finds home. Oh, the wolf in the moonlight, he's found his true call, reading tales of wonder for one and for all. In a world of stars dancing, his spirit takes flight, with stories of beauty under the starlit night. With every word he reads, he casts a spell of peace, transporting all who listen to a land where joy won't cease. For in these fairy tales, amidst the laughter and tears, the wolf finds his solace, he conquers his fears. As the night grows deeper, he serenades the moon with melodies that linger, a soft and soothing tune. In this sacred hour, where magic abounds, the fairy tale wolf writes love into sound. Oh, the wolf in the moonlight, he's found his true call, reading tales of wonder for one and for all. In a world of stars dancing, his spirit takes flight, with stories of beauty under the starlit night. So if you hear a whisper beneath the silver skies, know it's the fairy tale wolf letting his heart rise.
Okay, I guess it helps if I unmute myself. How you doing, Guilty? Welcome in. Checking out a few more. Yeah, it's a really good song. I just wish it wasn't AI generated. But I have no budget, and I essentially got the song for free. So. But how are you doing this evening? Well, I could. Oh. I'm not sure who I would get to sing it or get the music. Because I have the lyrics and everything for it, and I just don't, well, I don't have the music for it. On your way to work. Well, hopefully have a good night at work. Sorry, I'm eating M&M's. It's always a pain when particular flavors are only found in one store. Because at Dollar General, they've got an orange vanilla cream M&M's. They also have cinnamon roll chips Ahoy, and they're both listed as only at Dollar General, which just doesn't seem fair. There's also Dollar General that I finally found the Oreos with the Reese's peanut butter in it. Right? Tasted like Oreos with Reese's peanut butter. But yes, we are doing fairy tales tonight. And I posted a picture of what my microphone looks like on that Twitter that I just labeled as a mic in a box. It's got the sound foam inside the box. And it's on it's supposed to be a shock absorbing stand. So technically I can tap my desk and you shouldn't hear it. At least not much. But here's my typing. Because my little razor or not a keyboard is loud. That and I tend to be heavy fingered when hitting keys. But anyway, fairy tales. If I touch a button, a little delay, and of course, adds on my stupid background music. I need to find another source file to use. Well, at least a source file as opposed to a YouTube video with a fireplace. I guess I'm doing a fireplace. I don't even need to use the library sounds one. Anyway. It's 9:05. I'm going to get at least 4 stories tonight. We're on page 123. Which means we're already over halfway through the book. The last story ends on page 228. Which means we'll switch to the orange. Oh. Congrats on finally getting first. And I actually have water to hydrate with. As opposed to alcohol, which I used to drink on streams. My Friday Night Fairy Tale format has had changes over the past, 4 years. It started out as me kind of trying to interact as the drunk uncle reading fairy tales to his kid. Well, niece and nephew. Hey, Leon. Welcome in. am I still off-centered? Is it just my camera doing that to me? That's not the right thing to move me. Okay. Yeah. It's almost time to start the stories. So how's your day been, Leon? I wonder what the library would do if I just went in and recorded for like an hour of just audio that you hear in the library. That's what my background is supposed to be right now. Anyway. The first story we have tonight is from the Laplandish Martian, which of course means it's translated from German from a collection of stories from Lapland. Which is always interesting to get retranslated stories. It's not even from the original source or the original language, it's from the original area, but that's about it. The thing is, this one is definitely more fable. I would almost, well, no, fable sounds right. Anyway. Our first story for this fabulous Friday night of fairy tales. How some wild animals became tame ones. Once upon a time, there lived a miller who was so rich that when he was going to be married, he asked to the feast not only his own friends, but also the wild animals who dwelt in the hills and woods round about. The chief of the bears, the wolves, the foxes, the horses, the cows, the goats, the sheep, and the reindeer all received invitations. And as they were not accustomed to weddings, they were greatly pleased and flattered, and sent back messages in their politest language that they would certainly be there. The first to start on the morning of the wedding day was the bear, who always liked to be punctual, and besides, he had a long way to go, and his hair, being so thick and rough, needed a good brushing before it was fit to be seen at a party. However, he took care to awaken very early and to set off down the road with a light heart. Before he had walked very far, he met a boy who came whistling along, hitting at the tops of the flowers with a stick. "What are you doing?" he said, looking at the bear. Oh, this supposed to be good. "Where are you going?" he said, looking at the bear in surprise, for he was an old acquaintance, and not generally so smart. "Oh, just going to the miller's marriage," answered the bear carelessly. "Of course, I would rather much stay at home, but the miller was so anxious I should be there that I really could not refuse." Don't go, cried the boy. "If you go, you'll never come back. You've got the most beautiful skin in the world, just the kind that everyone is wanting, and they will be sure to kill you and strip it from you." "I had not thought of that," said the bear, whose face turned white. Only nobody could see it. "If you are certain that they will do what you not be so wicked. But perhaps you are jealous because nobody has invited you." "Oh, nonsense," replied the boy angrily. "Do as you see. It's your skin, not mine, I don't care what becomes of it. And he walked away quickly, with his head in the air. The bear waited until he was out of sight. Then he followed him slowly, for he felt that his heart that the boy's advice was good, though he was too proud to say so. The boy soon grew tired of walking along the road and turned off into the woods, where there were bushes he could jump off and streams he could wade. He had not gone far before he met the wolf. "Where are you going?" asked he, for it was not the first time he had seen him. "Oh, just to the miller's marriage," replied the wolf, as the bear had done before. "It is rather tiresome, of course. Weddings are always so stupid. But still, one must be good-natured." "Don't go," said the boy again. "Your skin is so thick and warm, and winter's not far off. They will kill you and strip it from you." The wolf's jaw dropped in astonishment and terror. "Do you really think that would happen?" he gasped. "Yes, to be sure I do," answered the boy. "But it is your affair, not mine. So good morning." And so he went on. The wolf stood still for a few minutes, for he was trembling all over, and then crept quietly back to his cave. Next the boy met the fox, whose lovely coat of silver gray was shining in the sun. "You look very fine," said the boy, stopping to admire him. "Are you going to the miller's wedding too?" "Yes," answered the fox. "It is a long journey to make from such a thing as that. But you know what the miller's family is like. So dull and heavy. It is only kind to go and amuse them a little." "You poor fellow," said the boy pityingly. "Take my advice and stay at home. If you once enter the miller's gates, his dogs will tear you to pieces." "Ah, well, such things had occurred, I know," replied the fox gravely, and without saying any more he trotted off the way he had come. His tail had scarcely disappeared when a great noise of crashing branches was heard, and up bounded the horse, his black skin glistening like satin. "Good morning," he called to the boy as he galloped past. "I can't wait to talk to you now. I have promised the miller to be present at his wedding feast, and they won't sit down till I come." "Stop, stop!" cried the boy after him, and there was something in his voice that made the horse pull up. "What's the matter?" asked he. "You don't know what you're doing," said the boy. "If once you go there, you'll never gallop in these woods any more. You're stronger than many men, but they will catch you and put ropes around you. You'll have to work and serve them like all the days of your life." The horse threw his head back at these words and laughed scornfully. "Yes, I am stronger than many men," answered he, "and all the hopes in the world cannot hold me. Let them bind me as fast as they will. I will always break loose and return to the forest in freedom." And with his proud speech, he gave a whisk of his long tail and galloped away faster than ever. But when he reached the miller's house, everything happened as the boy had said. While he was looking at the guests and thinking how much handsomer and stronger he was than any of them, a rope was suddenly flung over his head, and he was thrown down and a bit thrust between his teeth. Then, in spite of his struggles, he was dragged to a stable and shut up for several days without any food, till his spirit was broken and his coat had lost its gloss. After that he was harnessed to a plough, and had plenty of time to remember all that he had lost through not listening to the counsel of the boy. When the horse had turned a deaf ear to his words, the boy wandered idly along, sometimes gathering wild strawberries on the bank, and sometimes plucking wild cherries from a tree, till he reached a clearing in the middle of the forest. Crossing this open space was a beautiful milk-white cow with a wreath of flowers around her neck. "Good morning," she said pleasantly as she came up to the place where the boy was standing. Good morning, he returned. Where are you going in such a hurry? To the miller's wedding. I'm already rather late, and I'm for the wreath. Ugh. To the miller's wedding. I'm already late, for the wreath took such a long time to make, so I can't stop. Don't go, said the boy earnestly. Once they have tasted your milk, they will never let you leave, and you will have to serve them to all the days of your life. Nonsense! What do you know about it? Answered the cow, who always thought she was wiser than most people. Why, I can run twice as fast as any of them. I should like to see anybody try to keep me against my will. And without even a polite bow, she went on her way, feeling very much offended. But everything turned out just as the boy had said. The company had heard the fame of the cow's milk, and persuaded her to give them some, and then her doom was sealed. A crowd gathered round her and held her horns so that she could not use them, and like the horse, she was shut up in a stable, and only let out in the mornings when the long rope was tied around her neck, and she was fastened to a stake in a grassy meadow. And so it happened to the goat and to the sheep. Last of all came the reindeer, looking, as he always did, as if some serious business was on hand. Where are you going? Asked the boy, who by this time was tired of wild cherries and was thinking of his dinner. I am invited to the wedding, answered the reindeer, and the miller has begged me on no account to fail him. Oh, fool! Cried the boy. Have you no sense at all? Don't you know that when you are there they will hold you fast, for neither beast nor bird is as strong and swift as you? That is exactly why I feel safe, replied the reindeer. I am so strong that no one can bind me, and I'm so swift not even an arrow can catch me. So goodbye for the present. You will see me back soon. But none of the animals that went to the miller's wedding ever came back. And because they were self-willed and conceited and would not listen to good advice, they and their children have been the servants of men to this very day. Now this is a Lapland version of it, which is why the reindeer was most noble. Wolf, yeah, he figured it out. Though, they did have food. And food is nice. And they had couches. We like couches. Anyway, our second story. The stories we're about to hear are true, only the names have been changed to protect the innocents. Our next story, with its fabulous Friday Night a Fairy Tale, Fortune and the Woodcutter. Several hundreds of years ago, there lived in a forest a woodcutter and his wife and children. He was very poor, having only his axe to depend upon, and 2 mules to carry the wood he cut in the neighboring town. He worked hard, and was always out of bed by 5 o'clock, summer or winter. This went on for 20 years, and though his sons had now grown up and went with their father to the forest, everything seemed to go against them. They remained as poor as ever. In the end, the woodcutter lost his heart, and he said to himself, "What is the good of working like this if I never have a penny richer at the end? I shall go into the forest no more, and perhaps if I take to my bed and do not run after fortune, one day she may come to me." So the next morning he did not get up. When 6 o'clock struck, his wife, who had been cleaning the house, went to see what was the matter. "Are you ill?" she asked wonderingly, surprised at not finding him dressed. "The cock has crowed ever so often. It is high time for you to get up." "Why should I get up?" asked the man without moving. "Why? To go to the forest, of course." "Yes, and when I have toiled all day, I hardly earn enough to give us one meal." "But what can we do, my poor husband?" she said. "It is just a trick of fortune's who would never smile upon us." "Well, I've had my fill of fortune's tricks. If she wants to find me, she can find me here. But I've never done any more wood. But I have done with wood forever." "My dear husband, grief has driven you mad. Do you think fortune will come to anybody who does not go after her? Dress yourself and saddle the mules and begin your work. Do you know that there is not a morsel of bread in the house?" "I don't care if there isn't, and I'm not going to the forest. There's no use in your talking. Nothing will make me change my mind." The distracted wife began imploring in vain. Her husband persisted in staying in bed, and at last, in despair, she left him and went back to her work. An hour or two later, a man from the nearest village knocked at her door, and when she opened it, he said to her, "Good morning, mother. I've got a job to do, and I want to know if your husband will lend me your mules, as I see he is not using them, and can lend them a hand himself."
"He is upstairs. You had better ask him,"
answered the woman, and the man went up and repeated his request. "I'm sorry, neighbor, but I've sworn not to leave my bed, and nothing will make me break my vow." "Well, then, can you lend me your 2 mules? I'll pay you something for them." "Certainly, neighbor. Take them and welcome." So the man left the house, leading the 2 mules from the stable, placing 2 sacks on their backs, and drove them to a field where he had found a hidden treasure. He filled the sacks with money, though he knew perfectly well that it belonged to a sultan, and was driving them quietly home again, when he saw 2 soldiers coming along the road. Now, the man was aware that if he was caught, he would be condemned to death, so he fled back to the forest. The mules, left to themselves, took the path that led to the master's stable. The woodcutter's wife was looking out the window when she saw the mules draw up before the door, so heavily laden that they almost sank under their burdens. She lost no time in calling her husband, who was still lying in bed. "Quick, quick, get up as fast as you can! Our 2 mules have returned with sacks on their backs, so heavily laden with something or other that the poor beast can hardly stand up." "Wife, I've told you a dozen times already that I'm not going to get up. Why can't you leave me in peace?" As she found she could get no help from her husband, the woman took a large knife and cut the cords which bound the sacks to the animals' backs. They fell at once to the ground, and out poured a rain of gold pieces, till the little courtyard shone like the sun. "A treasure!" gasped the woman, as soon as she could speak from surprise. "A treasure!" And she ran off to tell her husband. Get up!" she cried. "You're quite right not to go out to the forest and await fortune in your bed. She has come at last. Our mules have returned home laden with gold in the world, and now is lying there in court. No one in the whole country can be as rich as we are." In an instant, the woodcutter was on his feet, and running to the court, where he paused gazingly at the glitter of the coins that lay around him. "Yes, you see, my dear wife, I was right," he said at last. "Fortune is capricious. You can never count on running after her, and she is sure to fly away from you. Stay still, and she is sure to come to you." "I wish. I haven't had any gold delivered to my door yet." Oh. Anyway. Let's see, where's this next one? Traditional populares de House de Nations. Asia Minua. So, source from Asia Minor. India. Yes. 5 pages. I got half an hour. Yeah, we'll go for it. So, might get a snickering by the title. Our next story, The Enchanted Head. Once upon a time, an old woman lived in a small cottage near the sea with her 2 daughters. They were very poor, and the girls seldom left the house, as they worked all day long making veils for the ladies to wear over their faces, and every morning, when the veils were finished, the other took them over the bridge and sold them in the city. Then she would buy food that they needed for the day and returned home to do her share of the veil making. One morning the old woman rose even earlier than usual and set off for the city with her wares. She was crossing the bridge when suddenly she knocked up against a human head, which she had never seen there before. The woman stared back in horror, but what was her surprise when the head spoke, exactly as if it had a body joined to it. "Take me with you, good mother," it said imploringly. "Take me with you back to your house." At the sound of these words, the poor woman nearly went mad with terror. Have that horrible thing always at home? Never, never! And she turned her back and ran as fast as she could, not knowing that the head was jumping, dancing, and rolling along after her. But when she... My cat just did a drum roll. Okay. Weird. But as she reached her own door, it bounded in front of her and stopped in front of the fire, begging and praying to be allowed to stay. All that day there was no food in the house, and the veils had not been sold, and they had no money to buy anything with. So they all sat silent at their work, inwardly cursing the head which was the cause of their misfortunes. When evening came and there was no sign of supper, the head spoke, for the first time that day. "Good mother, does no one ever eat here? During all the hours I've spent in your house, not a creature has touched anything." "No," replied the old woman, "we're not eating anything." "And why not, good mother?" "Because we have no money to buy any food." "Is it your custom to never eat?" "No, for every morning I go into the city to sell my veils, and with a few shillings I get from them I buy all we want. Today I did not cross the bridge, so of course I had nothing for food." "Then I am the cause of your going hungry all day." "Yes, you are," answered the old woman. "Well, then, I will give you money and plenty of it, if you will only do as I tell you. In an hour, as the clock strikes 12, you must be on the bridge at the place where you met me. When you get there, call Ahmed 3 times, as loud as you can. Then a negro will appear, and you must thank him. The head, your master, desires you to open the trunk, and to give me the green purse which you will find in it." "Very well, my lord," said the old woman. "I will set off at once for the bridge." And wrapping her veil around her, she went out. Midnight was striking as she reached the spot where she had met the head so many hours before. "Ahmed! Ahmed! Ahmed!" cried she, and immediately a huge negro, as tall as a giant, stood on the bridge before her. "What do you want?" asked he. "The head, your master, desires you to open the trunk and to give me the green purse which you will find in it." "I will be back in a moment, good mother," said he, and 3 minutes later he returned with a purse full of sequins and put it in the woman's hand. No one can imagine the joy of their whole family at the sight of this wealth. A tiny, tumble-down cottage was rebuilt, and the girls had new dresses, and their mother ceased sewing veils. It was such a new thing to them to have money to spend that they were not as careful as they might have been, and by there was not a single coin left in the purse. What happened when this happened, their hearts sank within them, and their faces fell. "Have you spent all your fortune?" asked the head from its corner, when he saw how sad they looked. "Well, then go midnight, good mother, to the bridge, and call out Mohammed 3 times, as loud as you can. A negro will appear to answer, and you must tell him to open the trunk and to give you the red purse which you will find there." The old woman did not need telling twice, but she set off at once for the bridge. "Mohammed! Mohammed! Mohammed!" she cried with all her might. In an instant, the negro, still larger than the last, stood before her. "What do you want?" he asked. "The head, your master, bids you to open the trunk and to give me the red purse which you will find in it." "Very well, good mother, I will do it." And the moment after he had vanished, he reappeared with the purse in his hand. This time the money seemed so endless that the old woman built herself a new house and filled it with the most beautiful things that were to be found in the shops. Her daughters were always wrapped in veils that looked as if they were woven of sunbeams, and their dresses shone with precious stones. The neighbors wondered where all the sudden wealth had sprung from, but nobody knew about the head. "Good mother," said the head one day, "this morning you are to go to the city and ask the Sultan to give me his daughter for a bride." "Do what?" asked the old woman in amazement. "How can I tell the Sultan that a head without a body wishes to become his son-in-law? They will think I am mad, and I shall be hooted from the place and stoned by children." "Do as I bid," replied the head. "It is my will." The old woman was afraid to say any more, and putting on her richest clothes, started for the palace. The Sultan granted her an audience at once, and in a trembling voice she made her request. "Are you mad, old woman?" said the Sultan, staring at her. "The wooer is powerful, Sultan, and nothing is impossible for him." "Is that true?" "It is, O Sultan, I swear it," answered she. "Then let him show his power by doing 3 things, and I will give him my daughter." "Command, O gracious prince," said she. "Do you see that hill in front of the palace?" asked the Sultan. "I see it," answered she. "Well, in 40 days the man who has sent you must make that hill vanish and plant a beautiful garden in its place. That is the first thing. Now go, and tell him what I say." So the old woman returned and told the head the Sultan's first condition. "It is well," he replied, and said no more about it. For 39 days the head remained in its favorite corner. The old woman thought that the task set before it was beyond his powers, and that no more would be heard of the Sultan's daughter. But on the 39th evening, after her visit to the palace, the head suddenly spoke. "Good mother," he said, "you must go tonight to the bridge, where you will cry, 'Ali, Ali, Ali,' as loud as you can. A negro will appear before you, and you will tell him that he is to level the hill, and in place the most beautiful garden ever to be seen." "I will go at once," answered she. It did not take her long to reach the bridge which led to the city, and she took up her position on the spot where she had first seen the head, and called loudly, "Ali! Ali! Ali!" In an instant the negro appeared before her, of such a huge size that the old woman was half frightened. But his voice was mild and gentle, and he said, "What is it that you want?" "Your master bids you to level that hill that stands in front of the Sultan's palace, and in its place to make the most beautiful garden in the world." Tell my master he shall be obeyed, replied Ali. It shall be done this moment. The old woman went home and gave Ali's message to the head. Meanwhile, the Sultan in his palace, waiting for the 40th day should dawn, and wondering that not one spadeful of earth should have been dug out of the hill. If that old woman has been playing me a trick, he thought, I will hang her. I will put up a gallows tomorrow on the hill itself. But when tomorrow came, there was no hill, and when the Sultan opened his eyes, he could not imagine why the room was so much lighter than usual, and for what a reason of the sweet smell of flowers that filled the air. Can there be a fire? He asked himself. The sun never came up at that window before. I must get up and see. So he rose and looked out, and underneath him flowers from every part of the world were blooming, and creepers of every color hung from chains from tree to tree. Then he remembered. Certainly that old woman's son is a clever magician, said he. I have never met anyone as clever as that, and I shall give him what to do next. Let me think. I know. And he sent for the old woman, who, by the orders of the head, was waiting below. Your son has carried out my wishes very nicely, said he. The garden is larger and better than any other king, but when I walk across it, I shall need some place to rest on the other side. In 40 days he must build me a palace, in which every room shall be filled with different furniture from a different country, and each more magnificent than the room that was ever seen. And having said this, he turned around and went away. Oh, he'll never be able to do that, thought she. It is much more difficult than the hill. And she walked home slowly, with her head bent. Well, what am I to do next? Asked the head cheerfully, and the old woman told her story. Dear me, is that all? Why, it's a child's play, answered the head, and troubled no more about the palace for 39 days. When he told the old woman to go to the bridge to call for his son. What do you want, old woman? Asked the son, when he appeared, for he was not as polite as the others. Your master commands you to build the most magnificent palace that was ever seen, replied she, and you are to place it in the borders of the new garden. He shall be obeyed, answered his son, and while the Sultan woke, he saw, in the distance, a palace built of soft blue marble, resting on slender pillars of pure gold. That old woman's son is certainly powerful, he cried. What shall I bid him to do now? And after thinking some time, he sent for the old woman, who was expecting the summons. The garden is wonderful, and the palace is the finest in the world, he said. So fine that my servants would cut a sorry figure in it. Let your son fill it with exactly 40 slaves, whose beauty shall be unequaled, all exactly like the other, and of the same height. This time the king thought he had invented something totally impossible, and was quite pleased with himself for his cleverness. 39 days passed, and at midnight on the night of the last, the old woman was standing on the bridge. Becca! 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 And he appeared and inquired what she wanted. The head, your master, bids you find 40 slaves of unequaled beauty and of the same height, and place them in the Sultan's palace on the other side of the garden. And when, on the morning of the 40th day, the Sultan went to the Blue Palace, he was received by the 40 slaves, and nearly lost his wits from surprise. I will surely give my daughter to the old man's son, thought he. If I were to search the world, I would never find a more powerful son-in-law. And when the old woman entered his presence, he informed her that he was ready to fulfill his promise, and she was bid her son appear in the palace that day. This command did not at all please the old woman, though, of course, she made no objections to the Sultan. Oh, it's gone far too well, she grumbled, and when she told her story to the head. But what are you supposed to... The Sultan will say when he sees his daughter's husband? Never mind what he says. Put me on a silver dish and carry me to the palace. So it was done. Though the old woman's heart beat as she had laid down the dish with the head upon it. At the sight before him, the king flew into a violent rage. I will never marry my daughter to such a monster, he cried. But the princess placed her head gently on his arm. You have given your word, my father. You cannot break it, she said. But my child, it is impossible for you to marry such a being, said the Sultan. Yes, I will marry him. He had a beautiful head, and I love him already. So the marriage was celebrated, and great feasts were held in the palace, though the people wept tears to think of the sad fate of their beloved princess. When the merrymaking was done, and the young couple was alone, the head suddenly disappeared, or rather, a body was added to it, and one of the handsomest young men that was ever seen stood before the princess. A wicked fairy enchanted me at my birth, he said. For the rest of the world I must always be a head only, but for you, and only you, I'm a man like other men. And that is all I care about, said the princess. So, women don't care as long as you're handsome and rich. No comment. Can you imagine presenting the Sultan, his son-in-law, as a head on a silver platter? I have to imagine that would be pretty awkward. Okay. Next story is 12 pages, so I know I'm not going to get that done before the ads. So instead, I'll allow it. Yes, that is a good point. But she was relieved he did have a body. And she's the only one who sees it. Let's see. I'll lay ahead, but that's enough. Yeah, that does. Now, it does make me wonder, would she carry him around everywhere? Would she give him a pillow? Or would she just keep using the silver platter? Because apparently he doesn't have to eat if he's just a head. Because he questioned it. Wholesome version of Isabella in the pub. Ah, out of basil. Yeah. I know I've heard this story before. I don't think it's been in any of my books, but yeah, I know the story. So how are you doing there, Griffin? Yeah, that does tend to happen. What are you working on? Or just anything? You're welcome. Ah. Yeah, you should probably get that kind of stuff done. No, well, you've got a week then. Hey, Squall. Oh, 2 years. Damn. The library's a good place for shadows. Unless it's a Doctor Who episode. Then, not so good. Man, 24 months. Hard to even think about me being that long, but I've been streaming for my affiliate anniversary for the third year is coming up in December. Dang, time really has come by. I really do appreciate everyone who comes in, because honestly, I know there's a lot of other storytellers out there. I mean, Art Griffin's one of them. Yeah. Yeah, the next story in the book is 12 pages long. So it's comparatively longer than the first 3 that we've done tonight. So I'm not going to start until after the ad break. Ad break is supposed to start in about 4 minutes. So feel free to stick around, everyone. I'm going to go take a quick break. See you in a bit. So I was trying to say how many M&Ms I could shove in my mouth during the break. Not at all sponsored, but you know, Dollar General apparently has an exclusive flavor. That's orange vanilla cream. And last time I happened across them, I bought a bag, and oh, I'm eating it. Ooh, half swords. No idea what a hack source is, but oh, okay. Figured it was one of the dinosaur type, but anyway. Welcome back. Hope the ads weren't too tedious. For those who aren't subscribed. So I think I've got subscribers, mostly gift subs from the first half of September. Last half would have been better. That way we could have gotten that fat Valorant cash. Yeah, no. But anyway, continuing. This is, also one from the Laplandish Martian. The Sister of the Sun. A long time ago, there lived a young prince whose favorite playfellow was the son of the gardener who lived on the grounds of the palace. The king would have preferred his choosing a friend of the pages who were brought up at court, but the prince would have nothing to say to them, and as he was a spoilt child, all things went his way. And the gardener's boy was quiet and well behaved, and he was suffered to be in the palace morning, noon, and night. The game the children loved the best was a match at archery, for the king had given them 2 bows exactly alike, and they would spend whole days in trying to see which could shoot the highest. This is always very dangerous, as it was a great wonder they did not put their eyes out, but somehow or other they managed to escape. One morning, when the prince had done his lessons, he ran out to his friend. They both hurried off to the lawn, which was their usual playground. They took their bows out of the little hut where their toys were kept and began to see which could shoot the highest. At last they happened to let fly their arrows both together, and when they fell to the earth, again the tail feather of the golden hen was found sticking to one. Now, the question began to arise, whose was the lucky arrow, for they were both exactly alike, and to look at them closely you could see that there was no difference between them. The prince declared that the arrow was his, and the gardener's boy was quite sure that it was his, and on this occasion the gardener's boy was and on this occasion he was perfectly right, but as they could not decide the matter, they went straight to the king. When the king had heard the story, he decided that the feather belonged to his son, but the other boy would not listen to this and claimed the feather for himself. At length the king's patience gave way, and he said very angrily, "Very well. If you are so sure that this feather is yours, yours it shall be. Only if you have to seek..." Trust him. "Very well. If you are so sure that the feather is yours, yours it shall be. Only if you will seek till you find the golden hen with the feather missing from her tail. And if you fail to find her, your head will be the forfeit." The boy had need of all his courage to listen silently to the king's words. He had no idea where the golden hen might be, or even, if discovered, how he was to get at her. But there was nothing for it to be done but to do the king's bidding, and he felt that the sooner he left the palace, the better. So he went home and put some food into a bag, and then set forth, hoping that some accident might show him which path he takes. After walking for several hours, he met a fox, who seemed inclined to be friendly, and the boy was so glad to have anyone to talk to that he sat down and entered into a conversation. "Where are you going?" asked the fox. "I have to find a golden hen who lost a feather out of her tail," answered the boy. "But I don't know where she lives or how I shall catch her." "Oh, I can show you the way," said the fox, who was really very good-natured. "Far towards the east, in that direction, lives a beautiful maiden who is called the Sister of the Sun. She has 3 golden hens in her house. Perhaps the feather belongs to one of them." The boy was delighted at this news, and they walked on all day together, the fox in front and the boy behind. When the evening came, they lay down to sleep, and put a knapsack under their heads for a pillow. Suddenly, at midnight, the fox gave a low whine and drew near to his bedfellow. "Cousin," he whispered very low, "there is someone coming to take the knapsack away from me. Look over there." And the boy, peeping through the bushes, saw a man. "Oh, I don't think he will rob us," said the boy. And when the man drew near, he told them his story, which was not much more interesting and stranger than he asked leave to travel with him, as he might be of some use. So when the sun rose again, they set out, the fox in front as before, the man and the boy following. After some hours, they reached the castle of the Sister of the Sun, who kept the golden hens among her treasures. They halted before the gate, and took counsel as to which of them should go and see the lady herself. "I think it would be best for me to enter and steal the hens," said the fox, but this did not please the boy at all. "No, it is my business, so it is right that I should go," answered he. "You will find it a very difficult matter to get hold of the hens," replied the fox. "Oh, nothing is likely to happen to me," returned the boy. "So go then," said the fox. "But be careful not to make any mistake. Steal only the hen which has a feather missing from her tail, and leave the others alone." The man listened, but did not interfere. The boy entered the court of the palace. He soon spied 3 hens strutting about proudly, though they were really anxiously wondering if there was not some grains lying on the ground that they might have missed to eat. And as the last one passed by him, he saw that she had 1 feather missing from her tail. At this sight, the youth darted out and seized the hen by the neck so that she would not struggle. Then, tucking her comfortably under his arm, he made straight for the gate. Unluckily, just as he was about to go through, he looked back and caught a glimpse of wonderful splendors from the open door of the palace. "After all, there is no hurry," he said to himself. "I may as well see something now I'm here." And turning back, forgetting all about the hen, which escaped from under his arm, and ran out to join her sisters. He was so much fascinated by the sight of all the beautiful things which he peeped through the door, that he scarcely noticed that he had lost the prize he had just won, and he did not remember that there was such a thing as a hen in the world when he beheld the Sister of the Sun sleeping on the bed before him. For some time he stood staring. Then he came to himself with a start, and feeling that he had no business there, he swiftly stole away, and was fortunate enough to recapture the hen, which he took with him to the gate. On the threshold he stopped again. "Why should I not look at the Sister of the Sun?" he thought to himself. "She is asleep and will never know." And he turned back for a second time and entered the chamber. The hen wriggled herself free as before. And when he had had his fill, he went out to the courtyard and picked up his hen, who was seeking more corn. As soon as he drew near the gate, he paused. "Why did I not give her a kiss?" he said to himself. "I shall never kiss any woman so beautiful." And he wrung his hands with regret, so that the hen fell to the ground and ran away. "But I can do it still," he cried with delight, and he rushed back to the chamber and kissed the sleeping maiden on the forehead. But alas, when he came out again, he found that the hen had grown so shy that she would not let him come near her. And worse than that, her sisters began to cluck so loudly that the Sister of the Sun was awakened by the noise. She jumped up in haste from her bed, and going to the door, she said to the boy, "You shall never, never have my hen. till you bring back my sister who was carried off by the giant to his castle, which is a long way off." Slowly and sadly the youth left the palace and told his story to his friends, who were waiting outside the gate, and how he had actually held the hen 3 times in his arms and he lost her. "I knew we should not get off so easily," said the fox, shaking his head. "But there is no more time to waste. Let us set off at once to search for her sister. Luckily, I know the way." They walked on for many days, till at length the fox, who, as usual, was going first, stopped suddenly. "The giant's castle is not far off now," he said. "But when we reach it, you two must remain outside while I go to fetch the princess. Directly as I bring her out, you must just catch hold of her tight and get away as fast as you can, while I return to the castle to talk to the giants, for there are many of them, so that they may not notice the escape of the princess." A few minutes later they arrived at the castle, and the fox, who had often been there before, slipped in without difficulty. There were several giants, both old and young, in the hall, and they were all dancing around the princess. As soon as they saw the fox, they cried out, "Come in and dance too, old fox. It's been a long time since we have seen you." So the fox stood up and did his steps with the best of them. But after a while he stopped and said, "I know a charming new dance that I should like to show you, but it can only be done by 2 people. If the princess will honor me for a few minutes, you will see how it is done." "Oh, that is delightful. We want something new," replied they, and placed the princess between the outstretched arms of the fox. In one instant he had knocked over a great stand of lights that lighted the hall, and in the darkness had borne the princess to the gate. His comrades seized hold of her as they had been bidden, and the fox once again ran into the hall, before anyone had missed him. He found the giants busy trying to kindle a fire to get some light, but after a bit someone cried out, "Where is the princess?" "Here, in my arms," replied the fox. "Don't be afraid, she's quite safe." And he waited until he thought that his comrades had gained a good start, and put at least 5 or 6 mountains between themselves and the giants. Then he sprang through the door, calling as he went out, "The maiden is here! Take her if you can!" With these words the giants understood that their prize had escaped, and they ran off after the fox as fast as their great legs could carry him, thinking that they should soon come up on the fox, who they supposed to have the princess on his back. The fox, on his side, was far too clever to choose the same path that his friends had taken, and would in and out of the forest, so even at last he was tired out, fell fast asleep under a tree. Indeed, he was so exhausted with the day's work that he never heard the approach of the giants, and their hands were already outstretched to seize his tail when his eyes opened, and with a tremendous bound he was once more beyond their reach. All the rest of the night the fox ran and ran, but when bright red spread over the east, he stopped and waited till the giants were close upon him. Then he turned and said quietly, "Look, there's the sister of the sun." The giants raised their eyes all at once, and were instantly turned into pillars of stone. The fox made each pillar a low bow, and set off to join his friends. He knew the great many shortcuts across the hills, so it was not long before he came up on them, and all 4 traveled day and night till they reached the castle of the sister of the sun. What joy and feasting there was throughout the palace at the sight of the princess whom they had mourned for dead, and they could not make enough of the boy who had gone through such dangers in order to rescue her. The golden hen was given to him at once, and more than that, the sister of the sun told him that, in a little time, when he was a few years older, she herself would pay a visit to his home and become his wife. The boy could hardly believe his ears when he heard that was in store for him, for it was the most beautiful princess in the world, and however thick the darkness might be, it fled away at once in the light of a star on her forehead. So the boy set forth on his journey home with his friends for company, his heart full of gladness when he was brought to the promise of the princess. But one by one his comrades dropped off the places where they had first met him, and he was quite alone when he reached the native town and the gates of the palace. With a golden hen under his arm, he presented himself before the king, told of his adventures and how he was going to have a wife for the princess so wonderful and unlike any other princesses that the star on her forehead could turn night into day. The king listened silently, and when the boy was done, he said quietly, "If I find that your story is not true, I will have you thrown into a cask of pitch." "It is true, every word of it," answered the boy, and went on to tell that the day and even the hour were fixed when his bride was to come and seek him. But as the time drew near and nothing was heard of the princess, the youth became anxious and uneasy, especially when it came to his ears that the great cask was being filled with pitch, and the sticks were laid underneath to make a fire to boil it. All day long the boy stood at the window, looking over the sea by which the princess must travel. But there were no signs of her, not even the tiniest of white sails. And as he stood, the soldiers came and laid hands on him, and led him up to the cask, where a big fire was blazing, and a horrid black pitch boiling, bubbling over the sides. He looked and shuddered, but there was no escape, so he shut his eyes to avoid seeing. The word was given for him to mount the steps which led to the top of the cask, when suddenly some men were seen running with all their might, crying as they went that a large ship with sails spread was making its way towards the city. No one knew what the ship was or whence it came, but the king declared that he would not have the boy burned before its arrival. There would always be plenty of time for that. At length the vessel was safe in port, and a whisper went through the watching crowd that on board was the sister of the son, who had come to marry the young peasant, as she had promised. In a few moments more she had landed, and desired to be shown the way to the cottage where her bridegroom had so often described to her, whether he had been led back to the king's order at the first sign of the ship. "Don't you know me?" asked the sister of the son, bending over him where he lay, almost driven out of his senses with terror. "No, I don't know you," answered the youth, without raising his eyes. "Kiss me," said the sister of the sun, and the youth obeyed her, but still without looking up. "Don't you know me now?" asked she. "No, I don't know you, I don't know you," he replied, with the manner of a man whom fear had driven mad. At this, the sister of the sun grew rather frightened, and, beginning at the beginning, she told him the story of his meeting with her, and how she had come a long way in order to marry him. Just as she was finished, in walked the king to see if the boy had said was really true. But hardly had he opened the door of the cottage when he was almost blinded by the light that filled it, and he remembered what he had been told about the star on the forehead of the princess. He staggered back as if he had been struck. Then a curious feeling took hold of him, which he had never felt before, and falling on his knees before the sister of the sun, he implored her to give up all thought of the peasant boy, and to share his throne. She but laughed, and said that she had a finer throne of her own, and if she wanted to sit on it, that she would be free to please herself, and would have no husband but the boy whom she never had seen except for the king himself. "I shall marry him tomorrow," ended she, and ordered preparations to be set on foot at once. When the next day came, however, the bridegroom's father informed the princess that, by the law of the land, the marriage must take place in the presence of the king, but he hoped his majesty would not long delay his arrival. An hour or two had passed, and everyone was waiting and watching, when at last the sound of trumpets was heard, and the grand procession was seen marching up the street. A chair covered with velvet had been made ready for the king, and he took his seat upon it, and looking round upon the assembled company, said, "I have no wish to forbid this marriage, but before I can allow it to be celebrated, the bridegroom must prove himself worthy of such a bride by fulfilling 3 tasks. And the first is that in a single day he must cut down every tree in the entire forest." The youth stood aghast at the king's words, He had never cut down a tree in his life, and had not the least idea how to begin. And as for the whole forest... But the princess saw what was passing in his mind and whispered to him, "Do not be afraid. In my ship you will find an axe, which you must use to carry off to the forest. When you have cut down one tree with it, just say, 'So let the forest fall.' In an instant all the trees will be put on the ground. But pick up 3 chips of the tree you felled, and put them in your pocket." And the young man did exactly as he was bid, and soon returned with the 3 chips safe in his coat. The following morning the princess declared that she had been thinking about the matter, and that, as she was not a subject of the king, she saw no reason why she should not be bound by his laws. She meant to be married that very day. But the bridegroom's father told her that it was all very well for her to talk like that, but it's quite different for his son, who would pay with his head for any disobedience of the king's commands. However, in consideration of what the youth had done the day before, he hoped his majesty's heart might be softened, especially as he had sent a message that they might expect him at once. With this, the bridal pair had to be content, and be as patient as they could till the king's arrival. He did not keep them long, but they saw by his face that nothing good awaited them. "This marriage cannot take place," he said shortly, "till the youth has joined to the roots of all the trees he cut down again." This sounded much more difficult than he had done before, and he turned in despair to the sister of the son. "It will be all right," she whispered encouragingly. "Take this water and sprinkle it on one of the fallen trees, and say to it, 'So let all the trees in the forest stand upright. In a moment they will be erect again.'" And the young man did what he was told, and left the forest looking exactly as he had done before. Now surely, thought the princess, there was no longer any need to put off the wedding. She gave orders that all should be ready for the following day. But again the old man interfered, and declared that without the king's permission no marriage could take place. For the 3rd time his majesty was sent for, and for the 3rd time he proclaimed that he would not give his consent till the bridegroom should have slain the serpent which dwelt in the broad river that flowed at the back of the castle. Everyone knew stories of this terrible serpent, though no one had actually seen it. But from time to time a child strayed from home and never came back, and then the mothers would forbid their other children to go near the river, which had juicy fruits and lovely flowers growing along its banks. "You will succeed in this also," whispered the sister of the sun, pressing his hand, "for in my ship is a magic sword which will cut through everything. Go down to the river and unfasten a boat which lies moored there. Throw the chips into the water, and when the serpent rears its body up, you will cut off its 3 heads with one blow with your sword. Then take the tip of each tongue and go with it tomorrow morning to the king's kitchen. If the king himself should enter, just say to him, 'Here are 3 gifts I offer you in return for the services demanded of me,' and throw the tips of the serpent's tongues at him. And hasten to the ship as fast as your legs can carry you, and be sure to take great care never to look behind you." The young man did exactly what the princess had told him. The 3 chips which he flung into the river became a boat, and as he steered across the stream, the serpent put its head up and hissed loudly. The youth had his sword ready, and in another second the 3 heads were bobbing on the water. Guiding his boat till he was beside them, he stooped down and snipped off the ends of the tongues, and then rowed back to the bank of the stream. The next morning he carried them to the royal kitchen, and when the king entered, as was his custom, to see what he was going to have for dinner, the bridegroom flung them in his face, saying, "Here's a gift for you in return for your services you've asked me." And opening the kitchen door, he fled to the ship. And luckily he missed the way, and in excitement ran backwards and forwards without knowing where he was going. And then, at last, in despair, he looked round and saw to his amazement that both the city and the palace had vanished completely. Then he turned his eyes in the other direction and far, far away, he caught the sight of the ship with her sails spread and a fair wind behind her. This dreadful spectacle seemed to take away his senses, and all day long he wandered about, without knowing where he was going, till in the evening he noticed some smoke from little huts of turf nearby. He went straight up to it and cried, "Oh, mother, let me come in for pity's sake." The old woman who lived in the hut beckoned him to enter, and hardly as he was inside when he cried again, "Mother, can you tell me anything about the sister of the sun?" The old woman only shook her head. "No, I know nothing of her," said she. The young man turned to leave the hut, but the old woman stopped him, and giving him a letter, begged him to carry it to her next eldest sister, saying, "If you should get tired on the way, take the letter and rustle the paper." This advice surprised the young man a good deal. He did not see how it could help him, but he did not answer, and went down the road without knowing where he was going. At length he grew tired and could walk no more. Then he remembered what the old woman had said. After he had rustled the leaves only once, all fatigue disappeared, and he strode over the grass till he came to another little turf hut. "Let me in, I pray you, dear mother," asked he, and the door opened in front of him. "Your sister has sent you this letter," he said, and added quickly, "Oh, mother, can you tell me anything about the sister of the sun?" "No, I know nothing of her," answered she. But as he turned hopelessly away, she stopped him. "If you happen to pass my oldest sister's house, will you give her this letter?" said she. "And should you get tired on the road, take it out of your pocket and rustle the paper." So the young man put the letter in his pocket, and walked all day over hills till he reached the little turf hut, exactly like the other two. "Let me in, pray you, dear mother," asked he, and as he answered, he added, "Here's a letter from your sister, and can you tell me anything of the sister of the sun?" "Yes, I can," answered the old woman. "She lives in the castle on the Banka. Her father lost the battle only a few days ago because you had stolen his sword from him, and the sister of the sun herself is almost dead with grief. But when you see her, stick a pin into the palm of her hand and suck the drops of blood that flow. Then she will grow calmer and will know you again. But beware, for before you reach the castle on the Banka, fearful things will happen." He thanked the old woman with tears of gladness for the good news she had given him, and he continued his journey. But he had not gone very far when, at the turn of a road, he met two brothers who were quarreling over a piece of cloth. "My good men, what are you fighting about?" he said. "That cloth does not look like it's worth much." "Oh, it's ragged enough," they answered, "but it was left to us by our father, and any man who wraps it around him, no one can see him, and we each want it for our own." "Let me put it round me for a moment," said the youth, "and then I will tell you whose it ought to be." The brothers were pleased with his idea and gave him the stuff, but the moment he had thrown it around his shoulder, he disappeared, as completely as if he had never been there at all. Meanwhile, the young man walked briskly along till he came up to other men who were disputing over a tablecloth. "What's the matter?" asked he, and stopped in front of them. "If this cloth is spread on a table," answered they, "the table is instantly covered with the most delicious food. We each want to have it." "Let me try the tablecloth," said the youth, "and I will tell you whose it ought to be." The two men were pleased with this idea, and handed him the cloth. Then he hastily threw the first piece round over his shoulders, and vanished from sight, leaving the two men grieving over their own folly. The young man had not walked far before he saw two more men standing by the roadside, both grasping at the same stout staff, and sometimes one seemed to get the point of getting it, and sometimes the other. "What are you two quarreling about? You could cut half a dozen sticks from a piece of wood just as good as that," said the young man. And as he spoke, both fighters stopped and looked at him. "Ah, you may think so," he said, "but one blow out of the end of this stick will kill a man, while the other, yeah, while a touch from the other end will bring him back to life. You won't easily find another stick like that." "No, that is true," answered the young man. "Let me look at it, and I will tell you whose it ought to be." The men were pleased with this idea, and handed him the staff. "It's very curious, certainly," said he. "But which end is it that restores people to life? After all, anyone who is killed by a blow of a stick is only hard enough." But when the end was shown, he threw the stuff over his shoulders and vanished. At last, he saw another set of men who were struggling over the possession of a pair of shoes. "Why can't you leave that old pair of shoes alone?" he said. "Why would you not walk a yard in them?" "Oh, yes, they're old enough," answered they. "But whoever puts them on and wishes himself at a particular place gets there without going." "Well, that sounds very clever," said the youth. "Let me try them, and then I shall see who will be able to tell who they ought to belong to." This idea pleased the men, and they handed him the shoes. But the moment they were on his feet, he cried, "I wish to be in the castle in the Banca!" And before he knew it, he was there, and he found the sister of the son dying from grief. He knelt down beside her, and pulling a pin, he struck it into the palm of her hand, so that a drop of blood blushed out. Then he stopped, and he had been told to by the old woman, and immediately the princess came to herself and flung her arms around his neck. Then she told him all the story, and what had happened since the ship had sailed away without him. "But the worst misfortune of all," she added, "was a battle which my father lost to you and vanished from his magic sword, and out of his whole army, only one man was left." "Show me the battlefield," said he. And she took him to the wild heath, where the dead were lying as they fell, waiting for burial. One by one, he had touched them with the end of his staff, till at length they all stood before him. Throughout the kingdom there was nothing but joy, and this time the wedding was really celebrated, and the bridal pair lived happily in the castle in the Banca till they died. That story got a little confused. Because didn't really need the tablecloth, and the staff was new. I don't remember staff that could bring people back to life. Poke them with one end, they die. Poke them with the other end, they're back to life. Very slither idea, but that would be an interesting way to threaten people. Okay. That was a long story. Next one is slightly shorter, so it may be the last one for the night. So our next story for this fabulous Red and Fairy Tales The Prince and the Three Fates. Once upon a time, there was a little boy who was born to a king who ruled over a great country through which ran a wide river. The king was nearly beside himself with joy, for he had always longed for his son to inherit his crown, and he sent messages to beg all the most powerful fairies to come and see his wonderful baby. In an hour or two, so many were gathered around the cradle that the child seemed in danger of being smothered. But the king, who was watching the fairies eagerly, was disturbed to see them looking grave. "Is there anything the matter?" he asked anxiously. The fairies looked at him, and all shook their heads at once. "He is a beautiful boy, and it is a great pity. But what is to happen will happen," they said. "It is written in the books of fate that he must die, either by crocodile, by serpent, or by dog. If we could save him, we would, but that is beyond our power." And so saying, they vanished. For a time the king stood there where he was, horror-stricken at what he had heard. But being of a hopeful nature, he began at once to invent plans to save the prince from this dreadful doom that awaited him. He instantly sent for his master builder and bade him construct a long castle on top of a mountain, which would be fitted with the most precious things from the king's own palace and every kind of toy the child could wish to play with. Besides, he gave the strictest orders that a guard should walk around the castle night and day. For 4 or 5 years the baby lived in the castle alone with his nurses, taking his airings on the broad terraces, which were surrounded by walls, with a moat between them, and only a drawbridge to connect them to the outside world. One day, when the prince was old enough to run quite fast by himself, he looked at the terrace across the moat, and saw a soft little fluffy ball of a dog jumping and playing on the other side. Now, of course, all dogs had been kept from him in fear of the fairy's prophecy might come true, and he never had beheld one before. And so he turned to a page who was walking behind him and said, "What is that funny little thing which is running so fast over there?" "That is a dog, Prince," answered the page. "Well, bring me one like it. We will see which can run faster." And he watched the dogs till it had disappeared around the corner. The page was much puzzled to know what to do. He had strict orders to refuse the prince nothing, yet he remembered the prophecy and felt that this was a serious matter. At last he thought he had better tell the king the whole story and let him decide the question. "Oh, get him a dog if he wants one," said the king. "He will only cry his heart out if he does not have it." So a puppy was found, exactly like the other. They might have even been twins, but perhaps they were. Years went by, and the boy and the dog played together till the boy grew strong and tall. This time, at last, he had sent a message to his father, saying, "Why do you keep me shut up here, doing nothing? I know all about the prophecy that was made at my birth, but I would rather be killed at once than live an idle life, useless here. Give me arms, let me go, I pray you, me and my dog." Again the king listened to his wishes, and he and his dog were carried in a ship to the other side of the river, which was so broad that it could almost have been a sea. A black horse was waiting for him, tied to a tree, and he mounted and rode away whenever his fancy took him, and the dog always at his heels. Never was any prince so happy as he, and he rode till at length he came to the king's palace. The king who lived in it did not care about looking after his country, and seeing that his people lived cheerful and contented lives, he spent his whole time in making riddles, inventing plans which he had much better have let alone. At the period when the young prince reached the kingdom, he had just completed a wonderful house for his only child, a daughter. It had 70 windows, each 70 feet from the ground, and he had sent the royal herald round to the borders of the kingdom to proclaim whoever could climb up the walls to the window of the princess would win her for a wife. The fame of the princess's beauty had spread far and wide, and there was no lack of princes who wished to try their fortune. But very funny the palace must have looked each morning, with the dabs of different colors on the white marble as the princes were climbing the walls. But though some managed to get further than the others, nobody ever got near the top. They had already been spending several days in this manner when the young prince arrived, and as he was pleasant to look upon and civil to talk to, they welcomed him to the house. which he had been given to them, and saw that his bath was properly perfumed after his long journey. "Where do you come from?" they said at last, "and whose son are you?" But the prince had reasons for keeping his own secret, and he answered, "My father is a master of the horse of the king of my country, and after my mother died, he married another wife. At first all went well, but as soon as she had babies of her own, she hated me, and I fled, lest she should do me some harm." The hearts of the other men were touched as they heard his story, and they did everything they could think of to make him forget his past sorrows. "What are you doing here?" said the youth one day. "We spend our whole time climbing the walls of the palace, trying to reach the windows of the princess," answered the young man. "But as yet, no one has reached within 10 feet of them." "Oh, let me try too," said the young prince. "But tomorrow I will wait to see what you do before I begin." So the next day he stood where he could watch all the young men go up, and he noted the places on the wall that seemed most difficult, and made his mind that when his turn came up, he would try some other way. Day after day he was seen watching the rooms, till one morning he felt that he knew the plan of the walls by heart, and took his place by the side of the others. Thanks to what he had learned from the failure of the rest, he managed to grasp one little rough projection after another, till at last, to the envy of all his friends, he stood on the sill of the princess's window. Looking up from below, they saw a white hand stretched forth to draw him in. Then one of the men ran straight to the king's palace and said, "The wall has been climbed, the prize has been won."
"By whom?"
cried the king, staring up from his throne.
"Which of the princes may I claim as my son-in-law?"
"The youth who succeeded in climbing to the princess's window was not a prince at all," answered the young man. "He is the son of the master of horse to a great king who dwells across the river, and he has fled his own country to escape from the hatred of his stepmother." At this news the king was very angry, for it had never entered his thought that anyone but a prince would seek to woo his daughter.
"Let him go back to the land whence he came," he shouted in wrath. "Does he expect me to give my daughter to an exile?"
He began to smash his drinking vessels in his fury. Indeed, he quite frightened the young man, who ran hesitantly home to his friends, and told the youth what the king had said. Now the princess, who was leaning from the window, heard his words and bade the messenger to go back to the king her father and tell him that he had sworn a vow never to eat and drink again until the youth was taken from him. The king was more angry than ever when he received that message, and ordered his guards to go at once to the palace and put the successful wooer to death. But the princess threw herself between him and his murderers. "Lay your finger on him, and I shall be dead before sunset," said she, and they saw that she meant it, and they left the palace and carried the tale to her father. By this time the king's anger was dying away, and he began to consider what his people would think of him if he broke the promise he had publicly given. So he ordered the princess to be brought before him, and the young man also. And when they entered the throne room, he was so pleased with the noble air of the victor that his wrath quite melted away, and he ran to him and embraced him.
"Tell me who you are,"
he asked, when he had recovered himself a little, "for I will never believe that you are not the son of royal-blooded with veins." The prince still had his reasons for remaining silent, and only told the same story. However, the king had taken such a fancy to the youth that he said no more, and the marriage took place the following day. Great herds of cattle and a large estate were given to the young couple. After a little while, the prince said to his wife, "My life is in the hands of 3 creatures, a crocodile, a serpent, and a dog." "How rash you are!" cried the princess, throwing her arms around his neck. "If you know that, how can you have that horrid beast around you? I will give orders to have him killed at once." But the prince would not listen to her. "Kill my dear little dog, who has been a playfellow with me since he was a puppy!" exclaimed he. Never would I allow that." And all the princess could get from him was that he would always wear a sword,
and have someone with him when he left the palace. When the prince and princess had been married a few months, the prince heard that his stepmother was dead, and his father was old and ill, and longing to have his eldest son at his side again. And longing to have his eldest son by his side again. The young man could not remain deaf to the message, and he took a tender farewell of his wife and set off to his journey home. It was a long way, and he was forced to rest often on the road, so it happened that one night, while he was sleeping in a city on the banks of a green river, a huge crocodile came silently up and made its way along a passage to the prince's room. Fortunately, one of the guards woke up as it was trying to steal past him, and shut the crocodile up in a large hall where a giant watched over it, never leaving the spot except in the night, when the crocodile slept, and this went on for more than a month. Now, when the prince found out that he was not likely to leave his father's kingdom again, he sent for his wife, and bade the messenger tell her that he would wait for her coming in town on the banks of the great river. This was the reason why he delayed his journey so long, and narrowly escaped being eaten by a crocodile. During the weeks that followed, the prince amused himself as best he could, though he counted the minutes to the arrival of his princess, and when she did come, he was prepared to start for the court. That very night, however, while he was asleep, the princess noticed something strange in the corners of the room. There was a dark patch, and seemed, as she looked, to grow longer and longer, to be moving slowly towards the cushions on which the prince was lying. She shrank in terror, but at sight of the noise the thing heard it, and raised its head to listen. Then she saw it was the long flat head of a serpent, and recoiled at the prophecy that rushed into her mind. Without her husband, she glided out of bed, and taking up a heavy bowl of milk which stood on the table, laid it on the floor in the path of the serpent, for she knew that no serpent could resist milk. She held her breath as the snake drew near, and watched it throw up its head again, as if it was smelling something nice, while its forky tongue darted out greedily. At length its eyes fell upon the milk, and in an instant it was lapping it so fast that it was to wonder that the creature did not choke, for it never took its head from the bowl as long as it had a drop left in it. After that it dropped to the ground, and slept heavily. This was what the princess had been waiting for, and snatching up her husband's sword, she severed the snake's head from its body. The morning after this adventure, the prince and the princess set out for the king's palace, but found when they reached it that he was already dead. They gave him a magnificent burial, and then the prince had to examine the new laws which had been made in his absence, and do a great deal of business besides, till he grew quite ill from fatigue, and was obliged to go away to one of his palaces on the banks of the river, in order to rest. He soon got better, and began to hunt, and shoot wild duck with his bow, and wherever he went, his dog, now grown very old, went with him. One morning the prince and his dog were out as usual, and in chasing their game they drew near the banks of the river. The prince was running at full speed after his dog when he almost fell over something that looked like a log of wood, which was lying in his path. To his surprise, a voice spoke to him, and he saw the thing which he had taken for a branch was really a crocodile. "You cannot escape me," it was saying, when he had gathered his senses again. "I am your fate, and wherever you go and whatever you do, you will always find me before you. There's only one means of shaking off my power. You can dig a pit in the dry sand which will remain full of water. My spell will be broken. If not, death will come to you speedily. I give you this one chance. Now go." The young man walked sadly away, and when he reached the palace he shut himself in his room. For the rest of the day he refused to see anyone, not even his wife. At sunset, however, as no sound could be heard through the door, the princess grew quite frightened, and made such a noise that the prince was forced to draw back the bolt and let her come in. "How pale you look," she said. "Has anything hurt you? Tell me, I pray, what is the matter, for perhaps I can help." So the prince told her the whole story, and of the impossible task given to him by the crocodile. "How can a sand hole remain full of water?" asked he. "Of course it will all run through. The crocodile called it a chance, but he might as well have dragged me into the river at once. He said truly that I cannot escape him." "Oh, if that is all," cried the princess, "I can set you free myself, for my fairy godmother taught me how to use plants, and the desert is not far. There grows a little four-leaved herb, which is to keep the water in the pit for a whole year. I'll go and search for it at dawn, and then you begin to dig the hole as soon as you like." To comfort her husband, the princess had spoken lightly and gaily, but she knew she had no light task before her. Still, she was full of courage and energy, and determined that, one way or another, her husband would be saved. It was still starlit when she left the palace on the snow-white donkey and rode away to the river straight to the west. For some time she could see nothing before her but a flat waste of sand, which became hotter and hotter as the sun rose higher and higher. Then a dreadful thirst seized her and the donkey, but there was no stream to quench it, and if there had been one she would have hastily taken time to stop, for she still had far to go, and she must be back before evening, or else the crocodile might declare that the prince had not fulfilled his conditions. So she spoke cheering words to her donkey, who brayed in reply, and the two pushed steadily on. Oh, how glad they were when they caught sight of the tall rock in the distance! They forgot that they were thirsty, and that the sun was hot, and the ground seemed to fly under their feet, so the donkey stopped of its own accord in the cool shadow. But though the donkey might rest, the princess could not, for the plant, as she knew, grew on the very top of the rock, and a wide chasm ran around the foot of it. Luckily, she had brought a rope with her, and making a noose in one end, she flung it across with all her might. The first time, it slid back slowly into the ditch. She had to draw back up, and throw again. But the length of the noose caught on something, and the princess could not see what, and had to trust her whole weight upon this little bridge, which might snap and let her fall down into the deep rocks. And, in the case of her death, was certain of that of the prince. But nothing so dreadful happened, and the princess got safely to the other side, and then became the worst part of the task. As fast as she put her foot on the ledge of the rock, the stone broke away from under her, and left her in the same place as before. Meanwhile, the hours were passing, and it was nearly noon. The heart of the poor princess was filled with despair, but she would not give up the struggle. She looked around until she saw a small stone above her which seemed rather stronger than the rest, and by only poising her foot slightly on it she lay between. She managed by great effort to reach it, and this way, with torn and bleeding hands, she gained the top. And here there was such violent wind that was blowing that she was almost blinded by dust and obliged to throw herself upon the ground and feel for the precious herb. A few terrible moments she thought that the rock was bare, and that her journey had been for no purpose. Feel where she would, there was nothing but grit and stone, and suddenly her fingers touched something soft in a crevice. It was the plant, that was clear, but was it the right one? See, she could not, for the wind was blowing more fiercely than ever, so she lay where she counted the leaves. 1, 2, 3... Yes, there were 4. And plucking a leaf, she held it safe in her hand while she turned, almost stunned by the wind, to go down the rock. When she was safely over the side, all became still in a moment. She slid down the rock so fast that it was a wonder that she did not land in the chasm. However, by good luck, she stopped quite close to the rope bridge, and was soon across it. The donkey brayed joyfully at the sight of her, and set off at his best speed, never seeming to know what the earth under her feet was nearly as hot as the sun above him. On the bank of the great river he halted. The princess rushed to where the prince was standing by the pit he had dug in the dry sand, with a huge pot of water beside it. A little way off the crocodile lay blinking in the sun, with his sharp teeth and whitey yellow jaws wide open. At a signal from the princess, the prince poured the water in the hole. The moment it reached the brim, the princess flung in the four-leaved plant. Would the charm work, or would the water trickle away through the sand? The prince fell victim to that horrible monster. For half an hour they stood with their eyes rooted to the spot, but the hole remained full as it was at the beginning, with a little green leaf floating on top. Then the prince turned with a shout of triumph, and the crocodile sulkily plunged into the river. The prince had escaped forever the second of the three fates. For there stood looking at the crocodile and rejoicing he was free, and then he startled a wild duck flew past him, seeking shelter among the rushes that bordered the edge of the stream. In another instant, his dog dashed by in hot pursuit, and knocked heavily against his master's legs. The prince staggered, and lost his balance, and fell into the river, where the mud and rushes caught him and held him fast. He shrieked for help from his wife, who came running, and luckily brought her rope with her. The poor old dog was drowned, but the prince was pulled to shore. "My wife," he said, "has been stronger than my fate." Woo! Made it through 5 stories. Now, to find someone to raid. Let's see. Don't have any suggestions. I'm not seeing any that I already know and they're ready. Oh, really? Let's see. Henna's on, unless she's a rerun, as usual. And someone else I know is actually writing. Oh. And Dusk is on. She's playing Ghosts of Yotai. So you say, you chat. Writer, another reader, or a friend. Wait, I just noticed that Henna is doing a rerun. So, good night, Dusk. So thank you everyone for coming in. I've got my messages ready. And we will raid Dusk. So hopefully you all have a wonderful night. And I might see you Monday for gaming, Sunday for gaming. I'm going to try to game some more next week.
Until I'm technically sound, I'm not going to try to schedule one. But anyway, hope you all have a good night. Night, everyone.
Not so long ago, in a world full of strife, a man born a wolf, living a dual life. With magic in his veins, he walked the school hall, learning the arts, answering the call. But fear was a cloak he had to wear tight, hiding his truth, keeping darkness from light. Those who were scared turned away in despair, yet he bore the burden, he chose to take care. Now the times have changed, the monster's no longer scared. He's retired from magic, but his stories still flare, with tales of heroes, of legends so grand, selling dreams of the past across this vast land. In the shadows he lingered, where darkness would creep, protecting those kindly, never losing sleep. A guardian of secrets, a keeper of lore, he wandered through echoes, hearts wanting much more. No longer the wolf, but a